The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this episode are that of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the values of sponsors or other associated organizations. Welcome to the Parental Compass, presented by Family Education and Support Services. I am your host, Bobby Williams. You know the deal. Look up the Parental Compass on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe. That way you'll get notified every week when we drop a new episode. You can also find us at the official website, parentalcompass.org. No one wants their child to get caught up in the legal system. Still, for thousands of young people, it happens every day. There can be a lot of fear involved in this type of situation. You wonder, is my child going to be a criminal when they grow up? It can be a really helpless place to be. Here to speak with me about it is Sara Dotson. Sara is a civil probation officer with the Thurston County Juvenile and Family Court. I've known Sara for years through my work with youth in foster care and various community connections, and she has seen a lot of youth go through the courts, and she knows what works and what doesn't. We're going to get into Sara in just a second, but first I want to thank our friends at Molina Healthcare. This episode is sponsored through their Molina Cares program, building stronger communities one life at a time. So thank you, Molina. You can learn more about them by going to molinacares.com. All right, let's get into it. Sara Dotson, keeping your children out of court. Let's go. I worked a lot with the juvenile court, working with youth in foster care. I was in that building a ton for a while.
Yeah.
And so I'm very familiar with it. What do you think are the three most common issues that are bringing young people into the juvenile court? What do you see?
Assaults, like domestic violence assaults within the family, especially this past year where everybody's been confined.
Yeah.
Drug use and thefts are on the rise.
Well, it's kind of a desperate time for everyone too, and you think everyone's stuck at home, so I could see how domestic violence goes up, or everyone's kind of pushed a little closer to the edge right now.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I want to cover all those issues. I also want to talk about just the courtroom itself. Are there things that parents can do that can help or hurt their child's case, or things that the children can do that help or hurt? Like in the physical courtroom, What's the best move there?
When a youth first comes in and they're having a detention hearing, the only issue is, do we hold them or release them? And they might be held as a threat to the community or themselves, or a likely failure to appear. And a lot of times we'll have a parent stand up and start talking about the issues of the case and trying to either plead their child's guilt or innocence. And so that's always kind of attorneys are jumping up to stop the parent from talking anymore. Just being supportive is really what they need to do. They don't need to rush out and bail their child out. That will happen naturally.
So kind of just taking a back seat and just letting what's going to happen.
Yes, and understanding that the kids are all appointed with an attorney, so the parents don't need to go out and get an attorney, but that attorney is also just there for the youth. So parents a lot of times want to get in and, tell the attorney how to do their job, when really the attorney is there for their child.
Public attorneys get a bad rep sometimes. Is it worth it to get a more expensive attorney in general, or what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts in general are, and I don't know what they're like all over the state or all over the United States. We happen to have great defense attorneys right now, but that doesn't always happen. And if it's a really serious case, they may want to get their own attorney. But what I've learned is, it doesn't matter how high priced your attorney is. It's whether or not they have the respect of the court that's important. Because they don't have to be the top price in order to do a good job. And some of our more higher priced attorneys are not those that have a lot of respect from the court. So that's part.
Is there a way to tell if the attorney you're getting has the respect or not?
Ask people, ask other
Yeah,
people.
ask around about them. That's good to know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just difficult to mount a defense sometimes because it seems like the probation officers have working relationships with the judge.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I guess the regular defense attorneys do too. But it seems like if you're trying to fight a case, it's very difficult sometimes.
We try and work with the attorneys, and we kind of are like a liaison between the defense attorney and prosecutor.
Yeah.
To help come up with a good solution for the good outcome.
What about having a legal record? No one wants a felony on their record if you're applying for a job or something.
Right.
Does that stick with you forever? Do you have to seal your record? What can you do?
In Washington State now, records are legally sealed at 18. So they don't have to take any special steps. They used to have to take steps to seal their record. And a lot of people didn't know that. But now it's automatic at 18. Depends, though, if it's a very serious felony, like a murder, that would not be sealed.
You can't cover up the murder once you're 18. Well, that makes sense. Children sometimes can do something that impacts their entire lives. And it's just like, oh, you're so young. Don't mess up your whole life right now. And I think a lot of parents are worried when their child first gets in the legal system that this is just going to be the routine. They'll be in and out of detention. This is the direction their life is headed. Are there things you can do to make that less the direction or kind of correct course?
We have a lot of programs through probation to funnel the kids into, to keep them out of detention, to try and teach them whatever it is they're needing, social skills or anger management or things like that.
Yeah.
But parents, if they can keep their kids busy, structure is really important. Consistency is really important, but getting their kids involved in something is really important. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, I believe in that wholeheartedly. Or if you give a child something to be about, like your identity doesn't have to be you're a criminal or a kid that's always in trouble. Like your identity could be you're a rapper or a basketball player, work on a computer or something, you know?
Right.
That's a tough thing to establish sometimes.
It is. And especially if it hasn't been a pattern throughout their life, it's really hard to just take a teenager and say, okay, we're going to get involved in this. And
yeah, sign up for the soccer team. And that's just not their way. Yeah. Well, I think too, friends can be a huge influence. And, you don't want your child falling in with the wrong crowd. But also they have their own free will and they're going to do what they're going to do. So what can you do?
Well, if a youth is on my caseload, I can require that they not associate with someone. But I learned to put in there without prior permission, because sometimes this friend has just made a bad mistake also. And they're pretty much, stable all the other times. And if we tell them, absolutely, you cannot hang out with so-and-so, they are going to hang out with so-and-so. They're going to find a way to sneak around. And I would rather the kids be honest about it and ask me and ask their parents. And then a lot of times we'll set up certain ways that they can have visits. Maybe it's a supervised setting at the parent's house or, FaceTime or something. But we kind of ease into that.
Yeah. What are the rules? If you're on probation, you can't hang out with other kids on probation typically?
Yes, that's one of them. You can't hang out with anyone on probation, parole, or youth at risk.
What about parents? What can they do? Say their child isn't in the legal system yet, but they notice their kids are starting to hang out with the wrong crowd. Are there any steps they can take before probation gets involved?
It depends on the situation. If the kids have grown up in the same neighborhood, they may know the parents. And I think it's important to, be in contact with other parents when you realize that your child maybe is not doing what they're supposed to do, or maybe they have new friends that you don't know yet. I think it's important for kids to always give their parents first and last names of kids. And that's something they don't want to do. A lot of times they don't know the last name, but But I think it's really important that they do that. I also have advised that people go to the school, talk to the school counselor, kind of, the counselor's limited on what kind of information they could give, but at least if people at school know what the parents' concerns are, they can kind of try and keep an eye on that and who the kids are associating with.
It seems like a real protective factor is building community.
Absolutely.
You mentioned addiction being a big reason a lot of youth come to the courts. Say my 15-year-old is smoking weed and I catch him. How concerned should I be really? Because on one hand, it's like, well, a lot of kids smoke weed, but then obviously it's illegal for kids.
Always talk. Open the lines of communication if they haven't been open already. And try and find out if this is a first time, one-time thing, if it's a regular habit. And then I always suggest that the parents set up an appointment for a drug and alcohol evaluation, even if it's just a one-time use. Maybe they just need to participate in an drug and alcohol information class. Information is powerful, and I think that the more information kids have about what it really does to our bodies, the more better decisions they can make. It impacts brain development up until the ages of about 23 for girls and 25 for boys. So to me, I would rather err on the side of caution and have them participate in a drug and alcohol evaluation just as a consequence.
That seems reasonable. I think it's just viewed in society as this totally innocent thing. Your brain is still developing. It's something serious to think about.
Right.
Are there other things you can look for, or what are the warning signs that your child might start to be going down the wrong path or headed towards the courts?
Change in friends, drop in grades, a new stronger defiance, and just saying, I'm going to do what I'm going to do and you can't stop me. All of those things.
Is the court ever helpful? Like, maybe sometimes it'd be good to have a probation officer, because then if your child's not going to listen to you, maybe they'll listen to the probation officer. What do you think? Do parents ever come wanting their kids to get a PO?
More often than not, they want their kids locked up. And we clarify that that's not going to happen. But yes, and I've had kids on youth at risk more than once. And I had one young man who actually asked to be on it 3 times before he turned 18. He was on it all the way up to 18. Because he said it was easier for him to say, I don't want my PO to find out, than it was to say, my mom won't let me. So if I need to be a backbone for somebody, I am fine with that.
And that sounds a little more badass to be like, well, I don't want my PO to know versus my mom. Yeah. Well, we focus a lot on what the kids are doing and what can happen there. But what about the adults? Is there anything you as a parent can do to help the situation or make it so they're less likely to be headed to the court?
Yes, it is important for them to be taking care of themselves, even when there's chaos going on around them. If they're not strong, they can't be strong for their family, and the kids recognize that. And so the stronger a parent is, the better off everybody's going to be, because, their job is to rebel. And if the parent continues to back down, then it's not going to help the child at all. But if they're strong enough to hold their ground, it's going to work a lot better.
I imagine you need to be consistent with consequences too, or you don't want to be a pushover parent.
So in my mind, I kind of think of say what you mean what you say, and follow through. And if you say that you're going to take a phone, then you need to take a phone, or whatever else it is that the consequence is going to be. If they're grounded for a couple of days, they're grounded for a couple of days. You don't make exceptions. And once the kids know that consistency is there, then it's a lot easier to manage situations.
Another thing I think of hearing that answer is to not make it like a consequence on yourself, like you're grounded for a week. And then they're like, psh, and you're like, that's 2 weeks. And then that's 3, that's 4. And it's like, you can't ground them forever. Or I imagine there has to be a way to earn back the phone too.
Yes. And I tell parents that too. Don't keep adding on to whatever the consequence is that you've established. Because really the youth is just trying to save face. They're not, they don't like it, but they're not going to admit that they don't like it. So if you tell them to go to their room, they're like, fine, I've got food in my room, got a refrigerator, TV, whatever, And so then you try taking that out, and then they'll say, well, it's fine in here, I don't mind. So they're just trying to save face.
Yeah, let them save face a little.
Yeah, it's okay.
Well, and as long as they're still doing what you're telling them to do on some level too.
Correct.
As long as they're going to the room.
And if they don't have a way, if they don't know what is required to earn their possession back or their freedom back, then they're just going to say, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
So they need to have a goal. They need to have a way to earn their freedom or possessions back.
Yeah. Do you have any kids in your experience where they come into the court system, they're really looking bad, and they've been able to turn things around?
Well, one that sticks out in my mind was back when we had kind of a big gang population, and I had a young man on a truancy petition come in, and he came in on a contempt, and his choice was going to be to go to detention, and back then we could do it for 7 days, or to write a paper, but he had to write the paper in the building. He sat down in our lobby surrounded by baby toys, and he worked on a paper for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And he never came back. He went to school and, as far as I know, stayed out of trouble because I never saw his name again.
Do you think scaring kids works, to like send them to detention for a day or give them like a really gruff person yelling in their face? Or
well, we don't have any of that here.
Yeah.
Our people in detention are pretty nice. So yeah, they don't get that deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
And when we had a big population, it was a little more intimidating to be in detention. But our population is so low that they get a lot of attention, positive attention from the staff. So I don't believe in scared straight. I just think it doesn't work. Mm. It is an impact on the kids when they have to spend one night here. If they come in on a warrant and they spend the night here, I think it's more impactful on them to leave while they're still nervous. They haven't gotten comfortable back there, because once they do that, then you've kind of lost that as a deterrent.
Yeah, I would be thoroughly freaked out if I had to go to detention for a day as a kid. Well, do you have any closing thoughts or ideas that you want to share with parents who might be concerned about their children?
Just that they need to talk to people, whether they call the courts for ideas or talk to people at school, principal, vice principal, counselors. Start getting information on what programs are out there to help you, and ask for ideas. I think that's important.
Yeah, community and connection, like so many things just root back to that.
They do. Mm-hmm.
Well, Sara, thank you for taking the time to be here. I've always appreciated working with you and everything you've always done. So
thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Sara. It's about community. It's about building community and support around your family and your child. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Parental Compass. Please leave us a comment with whatever platform you're listening on. A big thank you to Family Education and Support Services and Molina Healthcare. My name is Bobby Williams. We'll see you next week. Peace.